So, I guess we could just start with your name.
Nelia Speranza.
Okay, could you please tell me your age, your gender identity, as well as your race, ethnicity?
Yeah, 21, female, and Hispanic Latina.
Okay, and have you ever lived anywhere outside of the U.S.?
Yeah, I was born in El Salvador and I lived there up until age 4.
Okay, so how would you define yourself and your identity as of now?
I'm a 21-year-old Hispanic college student.
Okay, do you speak any other languages other than English?
Yeah, Spanish.
And are you fluent, or is that a primary language?
Yeah, that is my primary language.
Okay, so now that we brought up the topic of language, would you include that in your identity now? And if so, why or why not?
I guess so. I guess the fact that I'm able to speak Spanish and not just kind of like the Spanish that they teach you in high school, but with some of the, I guess, slang terms that Salvadorans use, then I feel like it is a part of my identity in being Salvadoran.
Okay, and then do you actively think about language when you're engaging in everyday activities or everyday life?
No, more or less of I know that I'm gonna speak English Monday through Friday because I'm in school, and then at home only my father speaks English and it's like a little broken. So I know that when I'm home, I can't speak English. I have to speak in Spanish, and when I do speak Spanglish, my parents don't understand me. So that's when I actually think about what I have to say and like how to properly speak Spanish to my parents so they can understand me. That's the only time I think about it.
Okay, and then do you see a difference in how Spanish impacts your identity when you're talking with native English speakers versus people that speak the same language as you do?
I used to, because growing up, I guess, like in elementary school and middle school, I still had an accent, and so whenever I would speak English, the accent was there, and it kind of like, it'd be brought up like, oh, you have an accent, like, where are you from? But now it's gone, so it doesn't really like impact my behavior. But what was the second part of the question?
It was just does it impact? Do you see a difference in how language impacts your identity between English speakers and speakers of the same language?
Yeah, no, not well. I feel like I have a better connection, or like an at-home connection with people that speak Spanish. It's kind of like, oh, you speak Spanish too, and then just start throwing words out there.
In what ways do you think language influences our daily culture?
I guess if we're talking about English, it influences like how we behave, our music, politics, because I guess there's like, the talk of like academic English, and then you have like the slang terms that people use, and then in Spanish, of course, it influences like music and politics and general interaction.
Do you think that there's too much or possibly too little emphasis placed on language? And if so, how do you think that impacts our culture as a whole?
I think both. I think that there is a little too much scrutiny in language and like in terms of like our political climate and the racial things that have been said, and then sometimes too little because some people just don't understand why someone can't just speak English in this country if they're from another country and it's not their native language.
Okay, and then with that, how do you think that society can adapt to best support or acknowledge more diverse languages in everyday life?
I think that it has to start in our schools. I volunteered at Frankfurt Elementary, and they have a system in which they start teaching kids in kindergarten both English and Spanish, and the children, like, they just pick up on those languages really fast, and they don't know like the roots or the culture or anything, but they're able to speak English and Spanish, like Caucasian, African Americans, and Hispanic children, and not like they're able to interact with each other and speak with the children that may not speak English and like only speak Spanish, and I think like that's kind of the way that our system should focus on implementing languages, and so people can understand other people's cultures, because there's only so much that we as a society can understand when someone just explains us explains us something or translates something, I feel like if you're able to speak the language, you can like connect more to those people. So I feel like it definitely has to start at a young age, because if you try to teach someone who's like 70 in our society how to speak Spanish or anything when it comes to like cultural identity, it might be kind of tough to retrain their brain. So
Okay, thank you.